Hey folks, Matt here with my latest and greatest video for April 2025. This is going to be a follow-up video to my Small Faces / Humble Pie show. This is going to be Rod Stewart / The Faces. Get the four major bands and act out of the way for the Small Faces family tree. Months ago, I did a Yardbirds / Jeff Beck in the 70s video where I went over the first two Jeff Beck albums with Rod Stewart, Truth and Beckola, so I won't spend too much time on those today, but here's Truth. This is the audio fidelity version. This is a classic album. It's, Jeff Beck with that original Jeff Beck group where he had Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart, who would, join the Faces shortly after. It's got plenty of great stuff on here. Rod is in his early developmental stage as a singer. It's still clearly his voice. It still does, the raspy, voice we've all come to know and love over the years. But he's not fully in charge. He's not bringing his A game in terms of his original material. He's writing some of the stuff with Jeff. And he's just pretty much the singer in the band at this point. But you won't go wrong with Truth. It's, closest thing to a masterpiece that Jeff Beck did in the 60s. The follow-up was called Beckola. It's a really short album. I think it's less than a half an hour. More of the same, only probably not as immediate or as lasting as Truth. Rod is still more or less the way that he was on the first album. I would not say these are his best recordings in terms of his singing, but they still are great songs. Jeff is playing his ass off, and I recommend the first two Jeff Beck albums. Okay, while he was still in Jeff's band, he made his first great album. Well, that's not true, because I just told you that Truth and Beckola were great, but this is a better representation of what Rod could do. This is the Rod Stewart album. That's what it was called in the States. It was called An Old Raincoat Won't Ever Let You Down in England and maybe beyond, I don't know. This is a really good record, though. It serves as the blueprint for what he would be good at. Look at my reflection here. This is Pigpen, by the way. Pigpen, if you don't know what band Pigpen was in, I'm not going to tell you. It's a peculiar mixture, excuse me, of Rod's really good original songs at this point in his career, better than anything he wrote for the Jeff Beck group, and his really good ability to do cover versions of well-known songs. That's where his secret power lie. Starts off with Street Fighting Man, a pretty good version. It doesn't sound like the Stones version. Not as good as the Rolling Stones version of that. What would be, but it's good, and it's different enough to where it stands out. Man of Constant Sorrow is great. Blind Prayer, Handbags and Glad Rags, which I think Mike Dobble wrote that one. Probably the best song that I was unfamiliar with when I first heard the record. An Old Raincoat Won't Ever Let You Down. That's a great one. Wouldn't Change a Thing. Cindy's Lament, great. Dirty Old Town, great. It's really good. Had he never made another solo album after this, we would be looking back at this and saying this is like a lost 60s gem. But he would make better albums than this, guys. Okay, for whatever reasons, I don't really remember, the Jeff Beck group imploded before they were to perform at Woodstock. I don't know how well you can see this poster behind me, but the Jeff Beck group is advertised on there. They just never played, all right? So they had already broken up by then. Of course, Rod and Ronnie Wood joined the Small Faces, who would be the Faces, because Rod and Ronnie are not short. At this time, this album, Small Faces, or First Step, whatever you want to call it, came out in 1970. It is, well, again, they were a band at this time. Rod Stewart was not the breakout star, not at this juncture in their career, I don't think. He's got more command of his vocals than he did with the Jeff Beck group. He did it on his solo album too. This is tentative. I like this one. I like every Faces album. Let's go over it. Wicked Messenger is a good Dylan cover. Again, you know, it sounds nothing like the version you hear on John Wesley Harding. The Faces always had that ramshackle kind of barroom sound from the very beginning. The songs aren't really here on this album. Same way I kind of told you ZZ Top's first album was, but the sound is. Devotion is Ronnie Lane. Yeah, there's a lot of Ronnie Lane material on Faces albums. Shake, Shudder, Shiver, Stone, Around the Pimp is a really good one. Flying is a good one. Pineapple on the Monkey, that's 3 in a row. Nobody Knows, Looking Out the Window, and 3-Button Hand Me Down. That's one of the best tunes on here too. It's a strong record, but much like the Rod Stewart album, they would only get better. This I don't think is as good as the Rod Stewart album, but it's the Faces. So if you love the Faces, you're gonna like this. I'm gonna use for my Faces albums. This is what I recommend. This is the complete, you know, Faces. I have the box set too, which whatever, got some 5 guys walking to a bar. I couldn't find it. But this gives you the 4 albums remastered plus this 5th CD of, you know, standalone 45s and B-sides. It's all you need, really. It's all you need. This is better than just having 5 guys walking to a bar. Okay, so we're at 1970, right? Gasoline Alley. That's another, this is, if I told you that the Rod Stewart album was great, this is even better. This is virtually a classic. It's the same formula, the same format, you know, as the Rod Stewart album, only it's just more successful. I can't read that. I'll read the CD. Gasoline Alley is one of his masterpiece songs. That's one of the things he should be remembered for. He does a great version of It's All Over Now. You know, it's virtually as good as the Stones anyway. Only a Hobo is a masterful rendition of that Dylan. He always liked Bob Dylan, and he usually did well with Dylan's material. So, you know, Only a Hobo is no exception. My Way of Giving is great. Country Comforts is that's one of the first Elton John covers. The same year, because that album came out, Tumbleweed Connection, in 1970, same year as Gasoline Alley. Cut Across Shorty, really good, you know, Rod Stewart sounding version of the Eddie Cochran classic. Lady Day, Joe's Lament, and You're My Girl. It's a great album. If you don't know Rod the Rocker, you know, you just know Rod the purveyor of pop songs, you know, that he became in the late 70s and maintains that to this day. You need to hear these early Rod Stewart and Faces albums. I recommend them. Okay, we're in 1971, probably his greatest year, because he was part of no less than 3 really good albums, each one kind of better than the other. Well, I don't know the exact months that these were released, but this is Long Player, which is the second Faces album, and it's better, as you would expect, than the first album. Bad and Ruin just kicks ass. I love that Faces ramshackle sound. It's kind of similar to the Stones, you know, but more drunken, you know. Tell Everyone, Sweet Lady Mary is one of their classic songs. Richmond is one of Ronnie Lane's better tunes. Maybe I'm Amazed, the Paul McCartney song. It wasn't a standard when they covered that in 1971. The McCartney album had just come out in 1970, the previous year. They do it well, not as good as Paul, but you know, it's respectable. Had Me a Real Good Time, that's another Faces classic. On the Beach, I Feel So Good, and Jerusalem, same number that Emerson, Lake and Palmer did later on. It's good, it's strong. Only the next 2 albums he made in 71 will be even better than this. All right, his greatest album, virtually anyone will tell you that. Every picture tells a story. This is the old Mo-Fi CD, which has done me just fine ever since it came out. Never felt the urge to own a different CD version of this, although I had it before this came out, you know. Every song is great. Every Picture Tells a Story is a wonderful story song of his. Seems Like a Long Time is great. That's All Right. That's, you know, the old Elvis tune. He could take these songs, these classic songs that you think couldn't be bettered, and put his own spin on them to where you think that's interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better than the original, but it's good enough, you know, to, if not stand alongside the originals, be slightly below. Tomorrow's a Long Time, another great Dylan tune, which I don't believe had been on an album, or was it on his Greatest Hits album, Volume 2, which came out in 71, same year as this. Anyway, Only a Hobo was a kind of a lesser known Dylan song. You know, Wicked Messenger was just a deep cut off of John Wesley Harding. So he wasn't doing like, you know, Like a Rolling Stone or something like that. Maggie May is his signature song. He wrote it, you know, he sings it, it's masterfully played, it's probably the one song he's the most known for. Mandolin Wind, another classic Rod Stewart number. I Know I'm Losing You is the Faces at their best, doing the Temptations number, but making that a great, you know, R&B soul song into a great rocker. Reason to Believe, Tim Hardin. This is a 5-star classic album. In a year, 1971, where there was so many 5-star classic. 1971 would be for the early 70s what 1967 maybe, you know, was for the late 60s, where just so many people in bands were firing on all cylinders that it's a difficult year to beat. All right, so every picture tells a story. Okay, and before the year's end, the Best Faces album. A nod's as good as a wink to a blind horse. You know, this is when they were just at their peak. I'll use that phrase again, firing on all cylinders. Here's the DCC, Steve Hoffman version, right? Any version you get is great. Miss Judy's Farm, classic Faces. You're So Rude, one of Ronnie Lane's better numbers. Love Lives Here, Last Orders Please, Stay With Me, their only hit, really. You heard Faces songs on the radio here in the States, but I think that's a top 40 hit. And I want to say that was the only one that they had here. Debris, another one of Ronnie Lane's better tunes. Memphis is a really great version of the Chuck Berry number, I think better than even Johnny Rivers did it. Too Bad, and That's All You Need. So there you go, folks. Rod did his best album in 1971, and the Faces did their best in 71. In 72, keeping the great LPs going was Never a Dull Moment. Look at him. He's already looking bored there because he's having a dull moment. True Blue, Los Paraguayos, Mama, You've Been on My Mind. Another Bob Dylan one. Did Elvis sing that? No, maybe I'm thinking about something else. Italian Girls, Angel, the Hendrix tune. Interluding is going into You Wear It Well, kind of a sequel of sorts to Maggie May. I'd Rather Go Blind, Etta James, right? And Sam Cooke, his hero, Twisting the Night Away, another virtual 5-star album. There's no filler on here. Every song I just named you, I can remember. They're good. So, yeah, he was one of the great artists of that time, you know? Good enough with the Jeff Beck group, outstanding with the Faces, but a masterclass in album making on his own. All right. 73 is Ooh La La, the last Faces studio album of the 20th century. Anyway, I think that they're doing things again right now, but I don't know. Oh boy, can I read this? Well, the first one's Silicone Grown, about, you guessed it, breast enhancement surgery. You might say it's sexist, but it's not a bad song. Oh my God, I can't read it. Well, you know, that's all right. I won't waste my time trying to. Ooh La La is a classic Faces song, and it's what was that Wes Anderson movie, Rushmore? It closed that movie, I think. This is also a great album. You know, not as good as not as good as a wink, not as good as Never a Dull Moment, but still a solid record, you know, to end up on, to make that your last record. And in 74, perhaps one album too many, was Smiler. Smiler gets a lot of, you know, negative press, a lot of, bad-mouthing in Rod Stewart's circles. It's not that it's a bad album, it's just that it's not that good. It's the same formula as the albums he had done previously. A smattering of originals, cover versions, perhaps too many cover versions, with the unfortunate decision to include Aretha Franklin's I Feel Like a Natural Woman, where he changes it to I Feel Like a Natural Man. It's ridiculous, but that's just one song. He sings Let Me Be Your Car with Elton John. I like that. That's one of Elton John's lesser known numbers. Another Sam Cooke song, Bring It On Home to Me, which he puts You Send Me in there. Sailor's not a bad song. Farewell's not a bad song. Sweet Little Rock and Roller of the Chuck Berry number. That's probably, I think, the most successful cover on here. And Dixie Toot and Hard Road are just okay. Girl from the North Country is not a successful Dylan song because it's got the unfortunate inclusion of strings. And Mine for Me is not that memorable. So, But he wisely decides at the time, this is one too many in the same formula. He decides he's going to change. Hold on, I guess I can just show you this really quickly. This is the Faces extra disc in that box set. It's got some essential songs that weren't on the albums, for instance, Pool Hall Richard, which is one of their great ever numbers, which is only on here. They had a good greatest hits album from the 70s called Snakes and Ladders. That's the first Faces album I ever owned. And Pool Hall Richard, I want to say, well, that's for sure on that album, but I can't remember whether it opened the album or not. It opens this disc. Okay, so back to Rod. He decides, much like Paul Kantner when I did my Jefferson Starship, the airplane / Starship video, decided the 60s are over. The revolution didn't work out. I'm not going to be this artistic kind of purist guy. I just want to make money. I want to be successful. I want to sell records. And in, Rod Stewart's case, he wanted to drink the finest scotch or whatever, brandy, and bang supermodels. So he comes over here, and makes America his home base. And his whole attitude towards album making, towards the sound of his albums changed. The album which epitomized that, or at the time just introduced that concept, was Atlantic Crossing. This is the quad mix, which just came out on Blu-ray, so like a few days ago. So it's one of the reasons I was waiting for this to come out so I could show it on the video. It's a good record, Atlantic Crossing. It's probably better than Smiler, but I still don't think it's as good as any of the earlier Rod Stewart or Faces albums. Three-Time Loser, All Right for an Hour, well, the others are fine. All in the Name of Rock and Roll, Drift Away, the Dobie Gray number, Stone Cold Sober. I don't want to talk about it. It was one of his big hits. It's Not the Spotlight, This Old Heart of Mine, that's good. Still Loving You, and then Sailing, which was really big in the UK or in Europe, not so much in America. It's a solid record, and one of the last ones I can recommend, because this set the template. If the first Rod Stewart album set the template for the next few albums to come, the next few years, this sets the template for the next few Rod Stewart albums. A Night in the Town in '76 is kind of more of the same, but probably better. By then we have this idea of the fast songs being on one side and the slow songs being on another. Tonight's the Night, Gonna Be All Right, one of his huge hits. First Cuts the Deepest is another big hit for him. Fool for You, Killing of Georgie, part 1 and 2, about a gay friend of his. Was that a hit too? Because I remember hearing that on the radio. And then the second side is less memorable. Ball Trap, Pretty Flamingo, which is not a bad version of that song. Big Bayou, Wild Side of Life, and Trade Winds. Tom Dowd, produces, who had done all those Aretha and Derek the Dominoes and Cream album, whatever. So this is the last one I'm going to recommend to you. A Night in the Town, '76, before he goes disco and really pop. So, yeah, Rod Stewart, from '68 to '76, one of the most consistent album artists, really. I mean, if you look at those first 10 albums he made, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, he was not part of a mediocre album. Those are all good to great. And he was always a great singer, especially when he really found his footing in 69 to 70. And I'll tell you, Greil Marcus wrote a very influential, at least in my generation, essay on Rod Stewart in that first, the big Rolling Stone Illustrated History of Rock and Roll, or whatever it's called, book, which came out in the mid to late 70s. Not the little, album guide that Dave Marsh did for Rolling Stone, but it's a huge book. There was another edition in the 80s that came out, which swapped out some of the old essays for some new ones, but kept most of them. Anyways, Greil Marcus wrote what the thesis posited much that I have been telling you about how, when it was cool to be an artist in the late 60s, early 70s, that's what Rod was. When the 70s was really in full effect and it was the cocaine 70s and it was all the me generation, Rod became a populist. He became someone who wanted to make a lot of money and sell a product. And I don't blame him for that. Who's to say you and I wouldn't do the same thing under his, circumstances? He thought he could maintain that balance of having artistically fulfilling songs while making them extremely commercial. Maybe in his mind he did, because he certainly made more money at that latter part of the 70s than he had earlier, but he lost something, I think, in the process. I've seen him more than once live, including a few years back here in LA when he brought Jeff Beck out for a little mini set. And he still puts on a good show. He's an entertainer first and foremost. Read a book about him which kind of painted him as somewhat of an asshole, but I can see that. But anyways, early Rod Stewart was great. So I'm leaving the later years alone. Let somebody else do a video on that stuff. All right, so Matt signing off.